Adventure Time is a series full of crazy characters. One episode you're fighting a penguin god, the next you're fixing a truck with a banana. And that's what makes the show so great. Every episode is like a loot box. You never know which wacky goofball you're gonna get next. And the Ice King is definitely my favorite. He's this old ice wizard that kidnaps princesses, basically an older, crazier Bowser. And he claims some of the greatest Adventure Time moments.
She's 13 years old now.
Oh, dang it! Well, I'm out of here. Goodbye, everyone. Good morning, madness. What? Broken leg again? I will show you the true jerks. Behold!
It's too dark.
Behold! Behold! Behold the true jerks!
The jerks is us?
But the Ice King isn't just a punchbag jerkwad. He's also lonely and broken. Longtime Adventure Time fans will know that the Ice King is one of the most emotionally complex characters in animation. And while you would typically interpret his fugue state as a metaphor for Alzheimer's and being senile, today I want to offer you an alternate perspective. This won't conflict with the original interpretation, it's just another way of looking at this character. Today, I want to show you why the Ice King is actually a metaphor for the male loneliness epidemic. While I'm proud to share that I've broken out of my introverted shell and have become more charismatic and outgoing, I'm not going to pretend like it's actually gotten me anywhere. Socially, that is. I am certainly happier after embracing absurdism and becoming more carefree and confident, not afraid to converse, but it hasn't really introduced any relationships with new friends. I didn't adapt hoping for crazy popularity and attention. I did it because I thought it would attract some equally social people, as barely any of my high school friends stuck around nor kept in touch post-graduation, and I can finally make a couple friends, but nothing. Despite now striving for friendliness at my work and in public, not much has amounted from it. No matter how cheery I aim to be, whether sincere or out of desperation for a human connection, I'm still invisible. I shouldn't be surprised, though this is apparently quite the plague on my generation. People globally are reporting how difficult it is to make friends nowadays. We're all just so alienated from each other, and it gets to me some nights. I feel pretty isolated and anxious when I'm at home. Before the Mushroom War, Simon Petrikov met Betty Groff. They had the perfect relationship. As an antiquarian, Simon discovered and studied ancient artifacts. It was all well and good until he found the ice crown. When he put it on as a joke, he started acting crazy. Distraught, Betty left him for a future version of himself, but we don't want to complicate things too much here. So when Simon took off the crown, she was gone. His perfect life was gone. To make matters worse, the Mushroom War happened, and the world was gone. The only other person Simon had was Marceline, who he took care of during the aftermath of the war. But every time Simon put on the crown, a piece of himself was lost. He was going crazy, and he had to leave her. He was afraid of hurting the only person who he had in his life. He drove himself far away and built the Ice Kingdom, where his madness festered, and he became the Ice King. We're going to examine these early years in Simon's history and apply what we know about loneliness to them. We'll mainly relate his story to men's loneliness, but the same principles can be applied to loneliness in general, no matter who you identify as. In reality, the perfect relationship doesn't exist, and this is explored later in Fiona and Cake, which we'll cover in a future video. For Simon, it's not the relationship itself that's important here, it's the loss of this connection that sets Simon down a path of destruction. As far as we know, Betty was the only real relationship that Simon had. Relationship meaning close human connection. We don't know this for sure, but we can infer from this rough speech that Simon probably didn't have a lot of close friends. And this is typical of men, unfortunately, especially during this time. Today, men report having very few close friends, if any at all. 15% of men report having 0 close friends. It can get really, really difficult to keep going when you have no one to talk to about your problems, your feelings, anything. It's no surprise that Simon fell into this depressive state when he lost Betty. She was likely his only connection. So, what does the ice crown represent here? It's the catalyst for Simon ruining his life. So what's the equivalent in our lives? What is your, mine, everyone's ice crown? Well, how do you numb yourself? Alcohol? Drugs? Excessive eating? Pornography? I see the ice crown as a tool for Simon to numb himself. When he puts it on, he's powerful. but overuse causes him to lose the people around him. It'll make more sense for the ice crown to represent these things later on in the video, but for now, you can imagine what never taking the crown off would do to a person. I would say that I've felt loneliness ever since the pandemic started, especially with me getting into the intensive program of my school. I couldn't find any people to relate with except for a few people. The loneliness worsened with the falling out of my only friends on my political ideals, on things like abortion, trans rights, etc. And this manifested through my grades falling. Eventually, my grades fell so much that I was kicked out of intensive, which was a blessing in disguise. In the regular section, I had a much bigger grip on who I can relate to, and I've rekindled many friendships and made many more. However, eventually I rejoined the intensive program for the sake of getting better grades, but I began to feel more isolated. For context, there's only 3 other men in the section, and even then I feel sort of isolated with them as well. My friendships in the regular section have also weakened, and while I still have contact with them on a regular basis, for a while I felt alone despite that. The Ice King is at best a nuisance and at worst a total creep. Completely under the influence of the Ice Crown 24/7, the loss of his perfect match seeps into his behavior. Simon wanted a human connection, but Ice King was willing to do anything to get it. He resorts to kidnapping princesses. Any princess, any at all. No one really sees it from the outside, but on the inside, Ice King can't ever understand why no one wants to be with him. Well, except for one person. Marceline still cares for Simon. He was the only one she had after the war, and she's the only one who knows why he acts this way. She keeps her distance, of course, but she kind of keeps an eye on him. In the episode I Remember You, Ice King barges into Marceline's house to play music with her, and she tries to get him to leave at first, but eventually she lets him stay. We've never really seen these two have an extended interaction up to this point, so having them bond a little over music is nice. But the creators actually went right to what we were all secretly fearing, and the Ice King tries to kiss Marceline. Yeah. Remember, this is basically the daughter he never had. So him trying to do this is pretty sickening, but unfortunately it's in his character. Ice King has been under the influence of the crown for so long that any interaction he has with a woman has to turn into something potentially romantic. As a man in his 20s, I can confidently say that holding a platonic relationship with a woman isn't effortless. There's always going to be some inherent imbalance there, and that absolutely sucks ass. The IK is at the point where it's hard to rationalize a platonic relationship with a woman, and that comes out in this particular episode. But the worst of the Ice King shows itself not through his behavior, but through his hearts. Ricardio is the Ice King's heart given life, and it pines for bubblegum just like he does. But Ricardio doesn't hold back at all, and things start to get really gross and perverted.
Now, my darling, we can finally be united as man and wife.
It was bad enough in his debut episode, but Lady and Peebles takes it all the way to Creeptown. This is unfiltered Ice King, the absolute worst side of himself, and it's hard to see him ever finding his way out of this state. So I bet you don't see the Ice King as a goofy villain of the week anymore, do you? And in all 3 episodes I mentioned, the Ice King wasn't even the antagonist. I think you're starting to see why I like to refer to the Ice Crown as an influence. The longer he wears it, the more out of touch with reality he becomes. And just like how we attempt to escape reality through our own addictions, he can't escape his. The longer you rely on these things instead of opening up to people, the more lost you become. And I'd say the Ice King was the most lost he's ever been at this moment. But Ice King does still have some restraint, I suppose. After all, he's mostly capable of functioning day to day. If you don't know his history, you'd be forgiven for mistaking him for someone with a healthy social life. But Ricardio takes Ice King's restraint and throws it out the window. Ricardio symbolizes what happens when you give up, when you sink deeper and deeper into your own self-doubt, and you stop trying. Stop trying to do what? Trying to make those meaningful connections, the real connections, like the one he had so long ago. The Ice King is lonely. He's the very definition of loneliness, and the Ice Crown only enables him to continue with his loneliness. And with this isolation comes depression, because in a number of episodes, we've seen Ice King go through poor body image, anger issues, and everything that accompanies negative self-talk. The Ice King, for one reason or another, struggles with making connections. just like a lot of men today. For some reason, we just can't seem to make friends like we used to, right? Things just got complicated, I guess. And these feelings of isolation only serve to drive us in unhealthy directions, making us even lonelier than before. It's a cruel cycle of torment. And there's only one way changed for Ice King in the episode Holly Jolly Secrets. It didn't fix his problems immediately, but I see it as the catalyst for his redemption. In this 2-part episode, Finn and Jake find Ice King's secret tapes.
I'll name you Red Nose and make you leader of the pack. Well, now you look boring.
When we finally get to the secret on the tape, we learn Ice King's backstory. How he was an antiquarian named Simon who found the Ice Crown and lost Betty. This doesn't change anything about the Ice King's behavior, but it does allow the people around him to see him differently. They see a different side of him, a human side. There's a tragedy in Ice King's story, and now people recognize that. There's something to relate to under all that ice and snow. After this episode, Ice King begins his slow reformation. Other than I Remember You, Fugue states Simon gradually changes his behavior. He starts to develop other relationships. We get to see episodes where he hangs out with other people, and he's not the antagonist. He even gets the chance to hang out with both Marceline and Bubblegum in a platonic fashion in the episode Broke His Crown. They sing karaoke and have dinner for a few minutes before the inciting incident of the episode kicks in.
Call me whatever you want. This is the best date I've been on since my last date.
This is not a date.
Neither was the last one. It was a robbery.
His vulnerability in Holly Jolly Secrets has inevitably led to a softer Ice King, one who is understood a little bit better. King's ransom shows how far he's willing to go to get Gunther back, which highlights how having a pet can make the biggest difference to someone who is lonely. In fact, that's probably another factor that led to the Ice King's redemption. Having a pet counts as a connection, and while it can't always help, it can be a great first step if you're having trouble making friends. But by far, the most important episode for Ice King's development is Season 9's Bespoken For, which shows us future Betty's acceptance that Ice King isn't Simon. He's his own person. She eventually backpedals on this later when she finds a way to save him, but in this episode, the Ice King has never been healthier. He's got a steady friend, life-giving Magus. They're like talking on the phone, just having a casual conversation. It's a far cry from the Ice King of earlier seasons, and for a moment, he and Betty really are together again, as different people. Magic Woman and Ice King. What separates Magic Woman from the other princesses is that she's more like him. Ice King has found someone who's just as weird as he is. To me, it's the peak of his reformation. Ice King's vulnerability led to people better understanding him, and eventually, actual friends. Here's the secret. That's the solution to male loneliness. At least that's what I think. As men, we're raised to be self-reliant. Emotions? I'd never even had one, and this works well for a while. We're impressing our crush, impressing our dads, everything is awesome. And then, switch. Men are expected to be emotionally open and reliant on others, make friends, but since so many of us were raised before men's role in society changed, we are having trouble reconciling it together. We're literally conditioned to not open up to others. Sometimes it's even punished with bullying or abusive parenting. That's why it's so hard for men to be vulnerable, and it's dividing us more and more. The solution to the male loneliness epidemic is vulnerability. The overcoming of the myth that men need to be self-reliant and emotionally distant. Because it's just not true anymore. I mean, it's hard, but you have to open up to people. Even if you screw it up the first few times, heck, even the first few 100 times, that's what will get you connecting with people again. Next time you're having a conversation with someone, even if it's a brief elevator ride or something, don't be afraid to open up if you've just had a bad day. Like if they ask you how your day's going, just say, honestly, not that great. It's not gonna pull you out of this cycle overnight, but it's a start. I really hope this video helped at least a little bit in some way. This one was kind of a hard one to make because I'm still figuring this stuff out too. You know, the stuff that I said, I believe in it now, but it's not a hill I'm gonna die on just yet. I'll be vulnerable myself for a second. I don't think I made my points super well in this video either. I think some of these points connecting the Ice King to male loneliness are just a bit flimsy, and I started with this idea, and when writing the script, it just didn't really come together the way I wanted. But hey, life's all about getting better, so it's a good start.